The village of Makuzi drowsed beneath the waking sun. Roosters crowed between houses of warped brick and corrugated tin. Outside one of these dwellings, Miriam balanced a basin of water on her hip, watching her 9-year-old son, Tolino, chase a green lizard past drying laundry. "For school, Tolino," she called, failing to stifle a smile. In the wash bucket, her hands paused. He scrambled upright, dust on his knees. "Can I have your old radio, Mama? Mr. Kalume says I need to bring something to show my class." Miriam's face darkened. That radio had belonged to her late husband, Bashiri. She almost refused, but then she saw the way Tolino's classmates looked at him, the way their parents whispered about her, the widow missing rent again. She relented, pressing his cheek. He beamed. Next door, Madame Chide, the landlord's wife, dumped leftovers for the street dogs. Her daughter Patience, the best-dressed girl in school, inspected the scene with guarded interest. Patience wore her father's gold wristwatch, too large for her thin arm. She caught Tolino watching and scowled, but glanced with envy at the radio hidden beneath his school jumper. Subscribe and hit like. Our powerful stories add years to your life. Join our Story Lovers Club and let us know in the comments. Where are you listening from? Makuzi's market sizzled with life by 8. Stalls fought for breath under the jacarandas. Bananas, cassava, jeans miraculously acquired from the city. Miriam bartered a sack of groundnuts for soap and kerosene. She avoided Madame Chide, who demanded rent with the bitterness of the underpaid, and instead greeted Auntie Sefu by the tomato stand. "Clever boy, your Tolino," Sefu commented, pushing a ripe mango into Miriam's hands. "I saw him drawing cars on the walls again," Miriam blushed. The drawings meant trouble, but they also filled her with pride. She sometimes wondered where Tolino had learned those shapes, how the hunger for lines and curves could be stronger than speaking, stronger than shyness or fear. Back at school, Tolino's radio drew a swarm of hands. Mr. Kalume, their creased old teacher, coaxed each child to present their special object. When Patience displayed her father's watch, she boasted about its trip to Parliament, the dinner with ministers. The class murmured. When Tolino showed the battered radio, explaining how his father would listen to music and teach him how sound travels, even without wires, the room grew silent. Mr. Kalume's eyes rested longer than expected on Tolino. "You know how to fix it if it breaks?" Tolino shrugged. It had only ever half worked. After class, Mr. Kalume stopped Miriam at the gate. "Your boy has hands like a mechanic," he said quietly. "I've a cousin in the city, runs a workshop." Madame Chide swept past. Overhearing. Honestly, overhearing. "Better hope he doesn't steal like his father's people did." Her voice, meant to wound, left a raw ache that simmered beneath Miriam's skin. That evening, as a thunderstorm bullied the tin roofs, Tolino lay drawing by candlelight. He sketched the radio's insides, imagining hidden circuits, secret sounds. In the next room, Miriam counted coins for rent, feeling the familiar press of fear. Patience, separated by one thin wall, wound her father's watch and dreamed of a life without neighbors. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating a figure in the street. A stranger with a limp, asking quietly for shelter. Miriam hesitated at her doorway, wary of the man in the street. His clothes spoke of travel. Dust caked his boots. His eyes, unblinking, were washed in anguish, but held the dignity of one unused to begging. "Forgive me," he said, voice cracking. "The rain caught me far from home." Tolino peeked from behind his mother, wary and curious. The man's gaze softened. "A sharp boy," he remarked. "Is this your home?" Miriam nodded, measuring risk. She had seen all kinds pass through Makuzi. The village police were slow, but Runers moved fast. She handed the stranger a piece of dried fish and let him stay on the porch. By morning, the storm cleared. Miriam found the man quietly mending her leaking water barrel with bits of rubber and twine scavenged from her yard. It was a small miracle, and neighbors watched with suspicion as she thanked him. He gave his name as Joseph. He spoke little of his past, but Tolino noticed his hands. Not the hands of a laborer, but one familiar with the tools of repair. Joseph watched Tolino sketch engines and radios, asking careful questions. At the market, word spread. Madame Chide, emboldened by gossip, accused Miriam of harboring a criminal. Auntie Sefu defended Miriam, claiming generosity ran deeper than suspicion. Yet Patience, always curious, approached Joseph as he worked. "Why do you know so much about machines?" she demanded. Joseph smiled, his sadness flickering. "Not all learning is from books. My father was a mechanic. My mother wished me to be a teacher." Patience narrowed her eyes. "You do not look like a teacher." Yet she lingered, watching how easily he coaxed order from chaos. Meanwhile, Tolino's drawings became intricate schematics. The broken radio lay in pieces, then reassembled, playing music not heard since Bashiri lived. Mr. Kalume visited, astonished. "Tolino, how did you fix it?" Tolino hesitated, but admitted, "Joseph showed me how the wires work." Kalume was stunned. "That man, did I know him once?" A flash of distant memory passed across his features, but he let the thought go. The next morning, tragedy struck. Miriam's rent was raised. Madame Chide bullied her in the doorway, waving notices, threatening eviction. "You have 3 days," she spat, "or you leave." Miriam, jaw set, sent Tolino to school and visited a friend in a nearby village, seeking desperate solutions. Joseph offered a small bundle of money, more than expected from an itinerant stranger. She refused, but hope flickered. In Tolino's class, a contest was announced. "The best machine design," Kalum explained, "will earn a scholarship and enough funds for your family's rent." Patience scoffed at Tolino's chances, but Tolino's eyes burned with defiance. That evening, Tolino worked as Joseph watched quietly. Joseph corrected his hand when he wavered, teaching him precision. Patience, spying from the window, saw a secret dignity in their work and wondered who Joseph truly was. But Miriam's struggle was not over. At the market, Madame Chide whispered, "They say Joseph once robbed a city estate. You take his help, and your son will be cursed by thieves." Night descended. Tolino, undaunted, delivered his design to Mr. Kalume. Joseph vanished into the dark, promising to return when the moon was new. Unseen, Patience tiptoed through Miriam's yard, clutching her father's watch, her heart pounding with a question she had not yet named. And in the silence, the radio played on, a signal calling out for justice, family, and a chance never given, only earned. The days merged into tension. Miriam scoured the market, gathering extra washing and mending from meager coins. The faces around her tightened. The rumor of Joseph's criminal past grew, even as her leaky water barrel remained miraculously functional. At school, Tolino hovered between hope and dread. His machine design, a simple, hand-powered maize grinder, sketched with loving care and ghostly traces of Joseph's guidance, sat in Mr. Kalume's desk drawer. Patience eyed him with a mixture of jealousy and curiosity, suddenly quieter than usual. That evening, Madame Chide arrived with her husband, the landlord. He was a barrel-chested man with a fondness for whiskey and thundering threats, but his left arm hung awkwardly at his side. Tolino, hiding behind the curtain, saw Madame Chide eye Miriam's meager possessions with cold calculation. "You have until Sunday," the landlord said, voice slow and dangerous. "My new tenants come Monday." After they left, Miriam's resolve broke. She sat on the step, heart pounding. Patience approached from the shadows, her face unusually gentle. "My mother is wrong about you," Patience whispered. "But if you lose the contest, what will you do?" Miriam met her gaze, searching for pretense, and saw only a flicker of the child behind the swagger. "Whatever I must, my son will not sleep on the road." Patience hesitated, then pressed something into her palm, a delicate hairpin, real silver, unmistakably valuable. "For emergencies. My father cannot count his debts anyway." The gift was both a kindness and a warning. Poverty did not erase dignity, but it sometimes required strange alliances. The scholarship contest drew near. The school hall vibrated with tension as students presented their inventions. Patience displayed a solar-powered lamp, gleaming, expensive parts ordered from the city via her father's connections. Tolino trembled, doubting his grinder could compete, though his design was clever. Underneath the table, Patience nudged her foot in nervous solidarity. Mr. Kalume, presiding, spoke to the gathering. "Originality is honored, but family, resilience, and hope are worth more than gold." As the judges deliberated, chaos erupted. A missing purse, accusations, tears. Madame Chide's shrill voice blamed Tolino instantly. "He saw me pay the school fee. He was near my bag." And the crowd swelled with murmurs. Tolino's face collapsed. Miriam, struck by panic, begged for calm. Amid the confusion, Joseph reappeared at the door, limping, eyes grave. "If you wish to find the truth," he said quietly, "empty every child's pockets, including Patience's." Patience paled, but nodded bravely. When her pockets were turned out, the missing purse fell. Faces turned. Madam Chid gasped, the room's mood upending in a heartbeat. Patience, trembling, stared at her own hands. I did not take it, she managed. I only wanted to help Miriam. My mother left her purse in my room. She would have blamed her anyway. A hush overtook the crowd. The moral lines were blurring. The children clearer in their motives than the adults. The judges, seeing the truth, ruled for Tolino's maze grinder. A machine for everyone, they declared. Born from need, made with love. Cheers rose, but only Miriam and Joseph saw how Tolino, sobbing, clung to Patience. Outside, the sun set red. Joseph handed Miriam a small envelope. For what you've lost, he murmured. She finally looked inside. New bills, the precise sum of her overdue rent. Her voice shook. Why are you doing this? Who are you? Joseph's face hardened in the dusk. He turned to go, but paused. There are debts no money erases, he said, and some families are bound by more than blood. As he vanished into night again, Patience clung to Tolino, and the lines of kinship, suspicion, and grace tangled tighter than before. Sunday dawned sharp and tense. Miriam carried hope and guilt, clutching both the contest's reward and Joseph's mysterious gift. The landlord's shadow loomed. The money would stave him off, but not the worry burrowed in her chest. Patience avoided her mother's gaze. In the house, Madam Chide raged. You shame us before Makuzi, befriending those people, letting their fief take the prize. Her words bruised, but could not penetrate the resolve that now stiffened in Patience's spine. Tolino woke early, returning to his drawings. His fingers moved with new confidence, but his thoughts swirled. Joseph's lessons had awakened more than mechanical skill. They unearthed a longing to know the truth. Why did the stranger know so much? Why did everyone seem afraid of him? That afternoon, a new crisis, a small parcel, wrapped in brown paper, arrived. Miriam, wary, opened it with Tolino watching. Inside, a stack of legal documents, a photograph of Bashiri, Tolino's father, with another man, Joseph. The resemblance, once hidden, now screamed from their eyes and jaws. The letter was unsigned, but just as she began to read, the landlord stormed onto her porch, his anger barely contained. I know you have money, but I want double next month, or I call the police on your thief friend, he barked. Miriam, nearly crushed beneath fear, gathered her courage. She straightened, facing him with a calm she did not feel. You have no right. My bills are paid. Threaten me again, and I'll tell Makuzi what I know of your gambling. The words startled even her. The landlord hesitated. The threat was not empty. As he retreated, Tolino thumbed through the photograph. Mama, is that Joseph? With Papa? Miriam's answer was heavy with memory. Long ago, before you, Bashiri and Joseph were like brothers. Joseph saved him in the city riots. But then something happened. They were blamed for a theft, the kind that ruins whole families. Patience, eavesdropping in the doorway, felt a secret twist in her chest. Her own father had once mentioned Bashiri, spitting venom about traitors who bring shame to their class. The pieces shifted uneasily in her mind. With night fell a silence tense as wire. Joseph returned, as promised. On the new moon, Tolino waited for him in the yard, holding the photo, heart pounding. "Do you really know my father?" Tolino asked. Joseph knelt beside him, the night lantern glow deepening his scars. "More than you'll ever know. Everything I've done for you, for your mother, is because I could not save Bashiri when it mattered." He drew a long breath. "I was the thief. That night, your father hid me, lost everything. I chose survival over truth." His voice wavered, years of grief breaking in his confession. "Helping you, it won't absolve me. Only you can choose what that means." Tolino, shocked and shaking, said nothing. But beside him, hidden in the shadows, Patience listened, and something inside her too trembled and changed. Morning would bring the landlord's reckoning, the unraveling of secrets, and a confrontation none could now avoid. Dawn arrived, heavy with expectation. Miriam barely slept, haunted by old betrayals and the new choices Joseph had forced upon them all. She paced, clutching the photograph and Joseph's confession as if they were both shield and weapon. Tolino, changed by knowledge, saw Joseph not simply as savior or teacher, but as a man marked by both guilt and love. He worked silently at the kitchen table, fixing the stubborn radio again, his hands steady as his mind fit new truths together. Meanwhile, Patience, racked by what she'd overheard, searched her home and her memories. She found a shoebox filled with old receipts, hidden IOUs, and a single fading photograph. Her father and the landlord, with Bashiri and Joseph in the background, smiling at some forgotten wedding feast. Patience's world tilted. The knots of resentment and envy unraveled, replaced by a growing sense of complicity. By midday, as Makuzi's heat rose, news of Joseph's confession began to spread, at first as rumor, then accusation. Madam Chide, desperate to regain standing, spun the old story with new venom. "The thief has corrupted them all. Their boy wins with help from criminals." This time, the market was divided. Auntie Sefu and the tomato sellers, emboldened by Tolino's invention and Miriam's dignity, formed a cordon of support. Others, led by the landlord and Madam Chide, threatened to call police, rallying the frightened and the ambitious. As the crisis crescendoed, a figure appeared, unexpected, clean-cut in sea clothes, carrying a briefcase and an air of careful authority. He was introduced as Mr. Kadogo, Regional Education Officer, and his arrival stopped the clamor. "I have come to see this invention and to meet its creator," said Mr. Kadogo. "We hear you have changed many lives in this place." He listened, eyes sharp, as Tolino explained the maze grinder's workings. When questions came about Joseph, Kadogo did not shy away. "My brother," he stated quietly, "was once accused as Joseph was. Sometimes justice comes late, but it comes." He turned on the landlord and Madam Chide. "I have reviewed the property records and complaints. But I also found evidence of fraudulent rents and funds taken from the village development account. The landlord's face blanched. Madam Chide's voice shrank to furious whispers. It would seem, Kadogo held up a file, the ones shaming others have their own debts to settle. The crowd, now buzzing with new revelations, shifted its judgment. Joseph, called to speak, faced the crowd. I did what I should not have. Bashiri protected me. All I can do now is help undo that harm. It was Patience, holding her box of discoveries, who stepped forward next. Our parents' secrets have hurt us all, she said, eyes meeting both Tolino's and her own father's. But if we keep blaming each other, nobody moves forward. Tolino helped me when my father would not. We're more family than enemies. Miriam, taking Tolino's hand, added quietly, we must choose the next step, not just tell old stories. The village felt the possibility of justice, not fiery retribution, but something harder, restitution and forgiveness. Kadogo nodded. The law sees crimes committed, but it also sees hearts willing to mend. Joseph will work with Mr. Kalume and the school to teach mechanics for free. The landlord will repay stolen funds or answer to the district judge. Madam Chide will, he paused, letting the consequences hang, apologize and help those she wronged. Tears streaked Madam Chide's face. Pride fought humility in ripples. The landlord finally bowed his head. And as for Tolino, his victory was no longer simply winning a contest. It was proving a spirit strong enough to piece together a fractured family and a frightened village. The sun descended, and in the cooling shadows, Patience offered Tolino her father's mended watch. It keeps better time since you fixed it, she joked, but in her voice was the hope of new beginnings. Joseph, forgiven but not forgotten, remained, no longer a fugitive, but part of a community seeking new balance. But one last reckoning remained. Bashiri's name, Tolino's future, and Miriam's decision about what kind of life they would choose. Now that justice had come home on feet, both slow and sure, night fell quiet over Makuzi. For the first time in months, Miriam felt the ache in her shoulders ease. She stood in the doorway, watching Tolino and Patience in the yard, chalking fresh designs on a broken door laid flat. Joseph cut wood nearby, helping Tolino craft the first real prototype of the maze grinder. The landlord's house was quiet. With his fraud exposed, he had begun to make amends, paying what he owed, working in the fields beside those he once threatened. Madam Chide, subdued, stopped Miriam at the well with a quiet apology and a basket of guavas. Humility, learned sharply, was now her lesson. Kalume and Mr. Kadogo visited often. Kalume found purpose again in mentoring both Tolino and Joseph, transforming the school's shed into a small workshop where children from every corner of Makuzi learned to twist wire, mend radios, and build tools for their families. Gone were the suspicions, replaced by laughter, the clang of hammers, and bursts of music from the ever-fixed radio. One evening, Joseph sat with Miriam. His hands, once fidgeting with nerves and regret, were calm. "Your kindness saved me," he said softly. "If there is work here, I will stay. I cannot erase the past, but I can help build something better." Miriam smiled, years of grief lifting. "Stay. Let the village see that wounds can heal, and that forgiveness can do what anger never could." Tolino entered, waving a sealed envelope. "A letter from the city. Mr. Kadogo sent my designs to the Polytechnic." His voice, excited, unburdened, shining in the dusk, told the true ending. Doors once barred, now open. Patience grinned at his side, their rivalry now gentle, their alliance unbreakable. "Teach me how to use your grinder," she teased. "The maze at my house will never know peace again." That night, as the lanterns flickered and the radio played, clear and sweet, Miriam understood that home was not just a place, but a promise. Justice was not only found in courts or punishments, but built daily in acts of courage, truth, and mercy. Above them, the sky swelled violet and gold. The village, no longer merely enduring, had begun to hope. And in the small workshop behind the school, the future hummed with invention, forgiveness, and the repaired bonds of family, chosen, accidental, and enduring.